Welcome to Fuller Speed Ahead. I'm Craig Fuller here with Cassandra Gaines. She is a transportation attorney, but if you've ever met a lawyer, you are an exception to the rule.
Thank
you
you.
are the most fiery lawyer in a good way that I know. So I would love to hear how you chose to become a lawyer. Because most lawyers I know are nothing like you.
Yeah, good question. I was in sales before I went to law school.
Okay.
And I was in New York City and I was kicking butt. I love sales. And the recession hit and we all knew we were getting laid off. And I had a family member that kept telling me to go to law school. And what he told me was, law school will teach you how to defend yourself, read, write, and think completely different than anyone else. And he also offered to pay for my first semester. So I went and I didn't even know what to expect. And I loved it because it's competitive and it keeps you motivated and you learn a lot.
So now, and then you joined, was it Schneider was your first transportation company?
No, actually I went to a law firm in Phoenix and you do rotations just like at Grey's Anatomy when the doctors are doing rotations through different areas of medicine, same thing with law. And there was one transportation partner, and his name is Jeff Simmons. He's now the GC at Global Trends, nicest guy in the world. I worked with him, and he taught me transportation law at the law firm.
Got it.
And then from there I went to Echo, and then from there I went to Schneider, and then I started my own practice.
Oh, fantastic. And you are all over social media.
Yes, I love social media.
You've got your flashback 80s and 90s grunge bands.
Yep.
That you wear, so
yes.
You, like I said, you're not like any lawyer. I think one of the things that we talk about, and the reason we've had Ellie, so Ellie is our resident dog here at FreightWaves. She comes with me. She also is my dog, so she lives with me. But we're talking about dogs in trucks and the distractions that can cause.
It can.
As we can see, dogs do what they want to do. What are your, what's happening?
Yeah, and the thing is, I just want to give a disclaimer. Is that some people are going to hear us talk about dogs and trucks and distracting and they're going to be like, wah, wah, wah. But that's not really what we're getting into. They are distracting, but they give a lot of comfort to truck drivers who are lonely, who need an excuse to take breaks, to exercise, to have a friend. They're good to have in the cab. Something to think about is that they can be distracting, of course, and I've had to deal with accidents where a truck driver had a dog, but plaintiff attorneys like to hear that a dog is in the cab.
Why?
Because then they can say that dog was distracting, even if it wasn't distracting, even if it was just like her, just chill and nice. They'll still use the argument, and it's very hard to say unless you had an inward-facing camera showing everything, which most truck drivers don't. It's hard to argue that it wasn't distracting.
Just because Ellie can be distracting.
Yeah.
Like, as good as she is right now, this is like in her calm moments.
Yep.
At times, she can see another car or another dog
and get very
or somebody
excited.
Or a squirrel.
Yep.
You know, the old squirrel joke. She is certainly does that, but she's very calm right now. But this is not how she is all the time.
I represented a trucking company once, and the truck driver was the nicest guy. I think he was driving through adverse conditions. I think it was snowing out, got in an accident, but so did many other vehicles on the road. But the plaintiff attorney found out he had a dog and targeted him to say that if he didn't have that dog, he would have pressed on his brakes and avoided the entire accident. Maybe he would have, but just the argument alone adds in a whole new factor, because jurors, they often tend to believe, because they don't usually side with trucking companies, they'll tend to believe that the dog was distracting.
And what can a company do?
First of all, recognize that perhaps you should reestablish, do we really want to have a policy where dogs are allowed? I know they're comforting, but are they truly distracting? Wouldn't you feel bad if you were a truck driver and the dog did distract you and you killed somebody?
Well, without a doubt, but
That
I
would be
can't imagine
horrible.
being, trucking, there we go.
Yeah, there
trucking
she goes.
can be a lonely
You're right.
job. And and oftentimes it's a thankless job. And I can't imagine being without Ellie, even here in this, in this office we have desks and stuff. She comes with me almost every day. I can't imagine not having her in the office. But I understand the risk. So what can a company do?
Some companies
Should they ban them?
Pets altogether.
But is that a wise thing with drivers?
I think that there's a balance. How about this? Instead of having a black and white rule where you ban, how about, I know this sounds funny, but just train them to have the dog. Some drivers will have like an enclosed space for the dog to keep them from going into your spot.
So in the bed,
cab.
in the actual bed of
I've had a driver once that had down on the floor, he just caged in the dog and had a smaller dog.
That sounds like such a, I mean, I'm driving across the highway and it's a lonely long road. I would want her in my seat.
I know, but you are also driving a very difficult, very heavy, very dangerous vehicle. So safety comes first, not our personal opinions, not how we feel, not money, safety.
But she keeps me awake.
Yeah,
she keeps
does.
me entertained. I have someone there to avoid it. And frankly, from a health perspective, there's a lot of data that shows that having a dog actually prolongs life and provides better health and creates happiness, which frankly you could argue is important in terms of the lifestyle of the driver.
Yeah. How about this? If it was up to me and I ran the trucking company, I don't like black and white rules. I don't like things where we say no. I like to train my drivers. So I would say, let's have smaller dogs. If you really want a dog, let's have smaller ones, and let's have a caged area or do something so they're not as distracting to you while you're driving.
And a inventory of baking bits so that they can be fed and happy when they don't act up, right?
Yes.
So it's a rewards mechanism. But let's get back to something serious, because this is actually a very serious issue. I mean,
it is.
We're making light of it because it's legal and it's lawyer talk and safety talk.
And we don't want people to fall asleep.
Which is, yes, exactly. But you mentioned cameras in the cab.
Yes.
It sounds like that seems like a very reasonable thing. Now, there is the risk. The dog does get distracted and does do something, which is a realistic risk. And you've talked about the cage can prevent that from happening. But you did mention something, which is cameras facing the driver in an accident reconstruction. It sounds like if you're going to allow dogs, that is a reasonable expectation of a driver.
I love the way you put that, and I think it is. Let's broaden that even more. I like having cameras inward facing and outward facing. And I know drivers hate the inward facing. And also, none of us want to sit here and have somebody staring at us all the time. But the inward facing, for those of us who've been in accidents and have been accused of doing something wrong, that camera could exonerate you, 1. 2, if you were doing something wrong, guess what? An attorney like me is going to see that video and they're going to be like, we did something wrong. Pay, help people out, whoever got injured, get rid of the case, move on. Then you know you're not getting surprised in trials. The assumption,
you're not when you go to trial, the chances are the trucking company is going to lose that because jurors are easy. It's very easy to explain to them. And I always use the analogy that we've all, even if you're a truck driver, and truck drivers especially, but driving down the highway, I love trucks and love drivers, but I've had bad experience with trucks. Trucks cut me off, driver gets angry, truck's going 90 miles per the road. It's not the industry, but all it does is takes one person to convince a juror that is what happened, is that worst moment in trucking is what they faced.
You hit it right on the head. So when I used to litigate these cases, we used to do focus groups. Have you ever seen like a focus group or anything where, you know, they'll have cameras and they'll have a one-way mirror and they'll ask people, oh, how'd the product taste? And they give their opinions. We do that for trials. So I'll put on the case in front of multiple people. We'll separate them into groups and ask them how they think and how they feel about the case. It is so educating. But everyone brings in their own experience with trucks. It's like they didn't even hear me when I was presenting the defense. They bring in this one time I was driving and this truck almost killed me, or, oh, my cousin lost a limb because of a truck accident. They bring in their personal feelings, and just like you said, everybody's got a trucking story.
And they want to punish the trucking company, and they want to punish the driver. They want blood.
They do.
And they want money.
Angry.
And they're angry.
And if you let that anger continue to fuse and snowball, you'll get those big jury verdicts. They're angry, and that's why you're getting those verdicts. And we're not talking about small verdicts. I mean, these we call them nuclear verdicts because they can actually, in many ways, they destroy the company that they're targeted towards. They do.
But you're talking about lawsuits that in a verdict today, catastrophic verdict of a death, a couple million is nothing.
It's nothing.
We're talking about 30, 40, 100, 200, $380 million verdict that was paid out. we're talking about major money, and there's very few companies that actually can afford to write those checks.
It's true. And people say, what's the solution? Oh, tort reform. That's not the solution. That's just a Band-Aid. Because what the solution is we need to put safety first and settle these cases quicker and understand that people are angry at trucking companies, and they're the ones deciding the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not the plaintiff attorneys or anybody else. It's the people.
And they're angry at dogs too, apparently.
They're very angry.
she's docile today.
I'm a little worried right now because I am a lawyer and I'm very scared that I'll put people to sleep. This
you have effectively done that to Ellie.
I have put her to sleep.
She is
even though we're talking about life and death
like,
right now.
Lawyer safety. I'm asleep.
Done.
I've done this class and heard it.
I haven't done that to any listeners either. But I'll tell you.
But if we could bring back bacon bits as an allowance for her good work, then she would wake up if she had bacon bits.
I'll tell you that most drivers, experienced drivers, that they're listening to this right now, they will hear me and they will be nodding their heads.
But like the thing that I absolutely love about you is you are not like a typical lawyer. You say what you think.
I do.
You say exactly the way it is. You don't sugarcoat it.
Nope.
But you do it in a very charming and energetic, passionate way, which I think is really effective. And I think we have to be honest. Oftentimes, when we're talking about, everyone's afraid to admit that trucks are under attack. And you defend the companies.
I do. I'm not a plaintiff attorney.
You're
I've
not
never
running
been a plaintiff
ads on TV where the Texas Hammer, sorry, Ellie.
She's awake.
Yep, sees what happens. She woke up. Where the Texas Hammer, we're gonna come after you. You're not doing that. You're actually talking about things that people can do to actually help the industry. But we have to be honest with these issues. Is there are situations, such as having a dog in a truck, such as having distractions, that trucking companies, it's a matter of time, not a matter of if, and oftentimes it's a bigger fleet.
Let's talk about this. The article you guys produced, and this is why I really, really have a lot of passion behind what you're doing, because you guys just produced an article talking about how Swift sent a message out to all their drivers.
And it was a completely innocent, I mean, I believe it was an innocent, the young person or the new person, I think it was new, did it in a way of, they have a goal of making service, right? They took the liberty of sending out a message. It was probably a young person with very little authority that did it. But
and
yet
that was what they said too.
They potentially created a really negative impact for Swift.
And let's broaden that. So when we bring someone on into a trucking company or into any company, our newbies are trained a certain way. And they realize the people around them, and they're influenced by the people around them. We build them how we want them to be as an employee. What concerns me more about what this employee did, this new employee, is because the values were not instilled at first. I go to the root. And I will probably get in trouble for saying this, because I'm friends with everybody at all these trucking companies. But if you had started out training that individual safety first and foremost, that individual would have never done that.
But are you saying, Cassandra, I just want to make sure that we're clear this, are you saying that you believe Swift's culture was unsafe? So you're actually saying, you're going on record as saying, you think Swift has a culture that isn't based on safety?
I guess here's what I'm saying. I am saying that what that person did indicates that they were not trained from the beginning and surrounded by people with safety first and foremost.
Let me counter that, and I'll say this: as the challenge is Knight Swift is 40,000 employees, maybe, a massive company. It is very difficult. You have one issue, right?
Right.
You have one issue. The employee made a mistake, and now you're indicting the entire company. I don't think that's fair.
I know, many people wouldn't, but guess what? You have all these drivers driving very heavy trucks, killing people if they get in accidents, killing people and potentially themselves if they are in a snowstorm still driving. This is safety. This is people's lives. Don't around with it. Start from the beginning and treat them safety first and foremost. Guess what company you won't hear this from? You won't hear something like this from Schneider. Because the people that are around, all their newbies, everybody walking the floor, Schneider people think about safety first. I know that's ballsy to say, but it's true because I work there. I know them. I know all their secrets. We train them. We think about safety.
But I mean, I think that you're making an entire indictment on the company.
I am, and I
That's
challenge
why you're
them.
a lawyer, and you're a good one because you probably have
I know I'm
convinced
right.
people.
And I'm challenging them, figure out the root of the cause of that message, because guess what? The drivers who received that message, when they were tired and they're in snowstorms with these heavy, dangerous trucks, how horrible was it to receive that message? Being told you still have to drive. That I would have felt horrible if I was a driver.
Yeah, and it just takes someone like you in a courtroom to convince a jury that that is a lack
That's
of
how
safety
you get the
culture.
$100,000. Guess what? If you guys had not blown that up on FreightWaves, I don't think.
In fairness, it was already well on social media. We covered it because it was a story that really highlights safety issues and was bringing to light. And frankly, it was taking on a life of its own. I think we're trying to create the awareness, but also bring transparency to it. But it's a much bigger issue, as you described.
I like the way that Knight is now involved with Swift's operations. I do believe, because I know the people at Knight very well. I know both companies very well. And Knight has a different approach to safety. And
It's now the same
than
company,
Swift.
though.
They're now the same company, but you know how it is. I don't know if you've ever tried to merge two companies that have been industriously start from the beginning with their own cultures. It's hard to merge. So I am challenging Swift to get it together.
Step up.
Step up. Don't have these outcasts anymore. Don't do this.
Yeah. So
Think about your drivers
what should they do?
first.
What should they do at Swift, Knight Swift, or any company for that matter, where you have the situation? I mean, the challenge of like media today is that anyone can send any message out on social media,
You're right.
on through emails, through Slack channel, or through a satcom.
Yep.
Which gives a ton of power to people who are a part of these companies.
Yeah. I think that everybody is going to have this instance with their companies where something like this happens, and they're
You have
like,
the
"Oh, I
aha
thought we were
moment.
doing everything right," and da da da. But this is your aha moment to go back and figure out, where did we go wrong? Because you went wrong somewhere. That message he sent out to everyone, or she, you went wrong somewhere as a company. Because the message should have been to everyone in that area where there's bad weather, get off the roads. That should have been the message. Do you remember that accident? Where let's see, Colorado. Woman's driving her pickup truck with her family. She's coming the other direction of the truck. It's icy conditions, and she loses control of her pickup truck, crosses the median, hits Werner's truck that was not speeding. He did not lose control. He pulled over afterwards.
This was a recent lawsuit, right? It was $40 million, I think?
It was more than that. It was intense. Or maybe it was $40 million.
It was
I get confused because they had another one that was
multi-million
intense.
dollar lawsuit.
And the argument the plaintiff attorney had said was, you shouldn't have been on the road. It was icy conditions, Warner. You shouldn't have been on the road.
And they ended up paying a nuclear
boatload of money.
lawsuit because of it.
And that's the world we live in. So when we have bad conditions, get the trucks off the road.
No, I think that's fair. I think you're making some very valid and salient points.
So I think that's where I'm coming from. And I
and
know
the thing
I'll
is,
get heat
the
from
thing
this.
is, if we were in a courtroom, the case that I would be making, if I'm on Swift's side or that, is this was a young or new associate that didn't know what they were doing, didn't have proper instruction. They made an inadvertent thing. You have turned this into, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
You failed culture. You're
failed
not
those drivers.
properly educating. You failed the drivers. And now what you've done is exactly what could be done in a courtroom.
Yep.
Which is convinced all these jurors, and you only have to convince, what, half? Is it half in a civil trial, or?
Yeah.
So
depends on how many people in the jury.
Okay,
Yes.
and it probably depends on the state.
Yeah.
Like Louisiana, who knows?
Louisiana, oh my gosh.
Like they run their own.
They do.
It's
I
quite
tell people,
different.
if you got a case in Louisiana and you're a
Cajun,
trucking company,
law,
you're losing.
yeah. Oh, really?
If you have a and it's not because of the court system, it's because of the jurors. So if you have a
So what
claim
is
in
the
Louisiana,
worst state? Louisiana?
by far.
Is the worst state? I've heard Georgia's a pretty bad state to get
Georgia's
sued.
okay. It's okay. It
Okay.
can be bad. It's okay. Louisiana is by far the worst. If you have a case there and you think that
But it's
you
not
have
even
a defense,
based on English, sort of the old. Is it?
I don't even know. I've never been local counsel there. I've only been
It's
consulting.
it's sort of a French legal. It's not even like I think most is Anglo-Saxon sort of law, sort of established sort of English common law, sort of. Whereas in Louisiana, a lot of it's based on sort of French, sort of the king and aristocracy.
I think the people who are there hate trucking companies, and it's very well known.
So
every case you have.
where do you see the biggest? I mean, you brought up some fantastic points, and nuclear lawsuits are something that people address. We've talked about the fact of adding safety as a culture, and also you talked about distractions, is putting cameras into the actual vehicles and filming filming the drivers. Drivers are not going to like that story because they're going to feel like their privacy is intruded upon. And this is their home, right? At the end of the day, this is effectively their home. How do you convince a driver to be okay with having a camera watch them do their job and live in their home?
Hard. It's incredibly hard, and it's hard for recruiting too. It's hard to even recruit drivers and say we even have an outward-facing camera. So drivers, at first, when we had outward-facing cameras in the industry, drivers were like, no, freaking out. But then people started getting sued. Drivers know this. They're all going to nod their head when I say this. How about the cars who come in front of the truck, cut them off, and the truck has no time to stop and ends up rear-ending them? You lose a rear-end case. If I hear you've rear-ended somebody, you've lost. But if I have an outward-facing camera that shows that somebody cut you off, we're in a much better position. So drivers started to see that it protected them. And sooner or later, drivers are going to start to see the inward one is protecting them as well.
I remember growing up, archiving data became this big. You didn't want to hold geolocation data because it would end up in trial and it sort of prove something.
You are right.
But it doesn't matter now because actually it doesn't matter in the sense that the assumption is when you walk into a courtroom and there's a trucking company being sued, they're going to lose. The chances are that they lose that if it gets to a juror. What you're saying is the company needs to bring its best defense, which is prove or disprove what the risks are in terms of showing what the driver did or did not do.
And you don't even get that far when you have these cameras. You don't even get that far because plaintiff attorneys will see the video.
And it makes their case very hard to prove.
So it saves so much money on litigation and
unless
whatnot.
It doesn't, and then it's...
But guess what? By that time, you already know there's no lawsuit because if you have a video that shows...
Got it. What else?
You save tons of money.
So Cassandra, another thing I want to ask about is a lot of freight brokers are now getting caught into these lawsuits, whereas before they were sort of... it would happen to the largest. C.H. Robinson, I believe, was sort of the first major broker years ago, I think it was over a decade ago. But now we're seeing really every broker. I think plaintiffs' attorneys have figured out where the money's at.
They have.
It's in the brokerage business, and they're getting caught in. What is happening?
So first we know that every trucking company is supposed to have about $1 million in auto coverage. That's not enough. If you get in an accident and a couple people are injured, even light injuries, $1 million isn't much. So plaintiff attorneys are thinking next.
Where's the money? Most trucking companies don't have money.
And so they will craft any argument they can to get anyone else, the shipper, the broker, anybody else. Brokers are easier because they have the insurance. And you can do vicarious liability or negligent selection of the carrier. Those are the two claims. One means you controlled and you employ the truck driver, so you got to pay. The other one means you knew something was wrong with that trucking company and you still picked them.
So what can a brokerage do to best protect itself?
Okay, so first, we think about safety first and foremost with the way we act. We don't, as brokers, I'm not saying you get into safety. You don't know crap about safety. That's the carrier's job. What I'm saying is how you act. So don't push truck drivers to drive through bad conditions. Don't call them while they're driving and you know they're going to talk to you on the cell phone. Don't push them to go faster or anything like that. Stay out of their business. That's the first rule. Second rule is you do need to vet carriers, but focus on service issues, not on safety. So focus on...
And you're saying don't focus on safety.
Don't go near safety.
Because if you have knowledge, and most brokers are not aware, the moment you have knowledge, and that can be proven, you basically open yourself up to all sorts of liabilities.
You've hit it.
So
I see brokers like digging into safety violations and this and that. I'm like, oh, no. No, that's not your place. You don't even know what you're looking at.
But isn't that an irresponsible thing to say?
Why?
Because wouldn't I want my brokerage to know what's up with safety?
See, the thing
you said vetting carriers, but that's a safety element. So
it's not. I want you to vet carriers regarding service. So look for freight guard reports, look for double brokering. If you want to look at safety, only look at third-party companies that will give you like a score. Like Carry for One, you do 2 brackets, and that's it. You don't know, it's a third-party company giving a score.
And compliance, right?
And
make sure they have their operating authority.
Yep, make sure they
do
have
the stuff
insurance.
that you can get that's transparent, but don't get into safer scores.
Don't get into, it's up to you.
Because
If
safer
you can
zone is
do-
public. I mean, I would argue that if I'm going against you in trial, and I know anything about trucking, the first thing I'm looking at is safer scores. Like, that information is transparent. It was on the website. Why didn't you look at that broker?
Great question. So with safer scores, I tell my clients, you can look at those scores, decide what your policy is, but here's the real thing about it. You as a broker, and most people in this room, don't even know what those scores mean.
Well, we're not brokers here.
So, I mean, anybody
work.
in the transportation
Got it.
industry.
Got it.
They don't even know what those mean. So pick them just because they're there, and it will reduce the frequency of a service issue. But don't pick them because of safety, because you, broker, you don't know anything about safety.
Got it.
And that's your defense too, is that, hey, these safer scores, even the FMCSA says on their own website that they don't use them for carrier selection. They're not reliable. And a lot of people don't even know what they mean.
Got it. Well, anything else that you can recommend? What is the one piece of advice, if you were to leave our audience with one thing, what is it they should be doing?
Just put yourself in the driver's shoes. So don't pressure drivers, don't push them to drive through snowy conditions, and think about how you would feel if you were getting phone calls every 30 minutes from the broker, wondering where you are. It's disruptive, distracting, and just put them in your mind every day when you're working.
And be careful with dogs.
And be careful with
Our
dogs.
dog has gotten distracted.
Don't wear flip-flops, drivers,
Really?
because that'll get used against you as well.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So flip-flops, drivers know. They know. Just remember, you may think you're safe, you're being safe.
Today, I'm not going to worry about flip-flops.
Just remember, plaintiff attorneys know, and they'll use these arguments against you.
Interesting. Well, Cassandra, ton of information.
Yeah, you got a
Thank
lot.
you for coming on. You'll have to come back to Fuller Speed Ahead. You guys, Carry for One's got a conference here
Yes.
in Chattanooga, and you're going to be there.
Yeah.
What
Carry
is this
forward
all
away,
about?
and we're teaming up March 4th and 5th, or it's 5th and 6th. 4th will be our welcome event. We're going to team up, and I'm actually going to roll out how to vet a carrier Cassandra's way, step by
Cassandra's
step.
way.
I'm going to create the industry standard,
Got it.
because there isn't one.
Well, the industry standard, I'm sure we're going to publish this, and we will make it, it's got to be an infograph, it's got to be a video. You're going to roll this out, announce it at Carry for One's conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Freight Alley. Everyone's going to be there. Cassandra's going to be there. That is enough, I promise, because she is a ton of information. If you're concerned about safety or legal and compliance information, she is the expert, and she is not afraid to tell you how she feels and does not care if she offends. So worth the visit. Come down here. If you enjoyed this particular show, Full Speed Ahead. Sorry, you got me.
Thinking about dogs and flip-flops.
Thinking about dogs who's not here. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to download the app that you can get on your Apple devices, your iOS devices, your Android devices, as well as get this on Apple TV. If you also sign up for FreightWaves Live between now and December 18th, we will send you an Apple TV 4K so that you can watch this and every other FreightWaves TV episode.